When Cannondale released this, the latest evolutionary step of its venerable SuperSix range, we were a little taken aback due to the dramatic reimagining of this icon. Whilst at first we lamented the disappearance of the classic round-tubed original, as soon as we threw a leg over it, we knew Cannondale was onto something special, and it's most deserved of a place on this year's Editor's Choice Awards.
So I, like many others, loved that old classic look of the SuperSix, the round tubing, the horizontal top tube. It was such a joyful ride. The bike was so well handling. We knew aerodynamic-wise it wasn't great, and this just looks so much different. What was Cannondale's thoughts behind the frame design?
Yeah, it's hard to even put them side by side and imagine that they're supposedly the same bike. But the funny thing about it is this whole bike came about not supposedly as the new SuperSix Evo. So it's actually Cannondale's take on the modern race bike. So it was going to be a completely separate project. But as soon as they started riding it in prototype form, they realised that it had something about the handling, something about that level of comfort to stiffness that felt the same as the SuperSix. So it kind of morphed into this, what we see now, the new SuperSix Evo.
Because that's what Cannondale are good at, right? They're good at making bikes that handle so well. They have the compliance, but they don't restrict you on performance.
No, and that's definitely the case with this. Like I said, it's a very brave move from Cannondale to completely throw away the old bike that everybody loved and to then go, no, this is it, this is the new one. And everyone was like, whoa. But yes, it's got all of the features of that SuperSix Evo that we all loved, but they've just basically brought it kicking and screaming into the 21st century. So yeah, there's a huge amount of aero features on this, and that's probably the first thing that you will notice is the frame design and the frame tubing. There's no round tubes left. They're all aerodynamically shaped now, and that's kind of like key to this new bike. It is faster and more efficient than the original, so it's about 30% more aerodynamically efficient, which is a huge change.
Which isn't surprising, really. I mean, you know, it wasn't a bad bike in terms of, you know, how it looked, but that is a huge amount for them to save. 30%. It's huge.
It's like big, fat, round tubes are not great at going through the air, so they basically kick the air out. And so they realised that the best shape and the shapes that you'll see, these are what they call a truncated airfoil shape. So it's effectively, they've taken the shape of an aeroplane wing, which as we know is aerodynamically very efficient, and basically chopped bits off it to kind of like mimic the shape or the best bit about it, but to make it as lightweight as possible. So there's the least amount of that airfoil shape going on here, but it has the same sort of aerodynamic advantages of a full airfoil shape. So you've got this in the down tube, in the head tube. Top tube is never really that much of an issue, but definitely seat tube here as well. So those are the big features there of the front triangle. But then probably the other thing that you'll notice that's completely different here is that rear triangle as well.
Yes, I mean, you say they brought the SuperSix into the 21st century in terms of a GC bike, a race bike, and that kind of epitomises that, doesn't it? You look at every single high-end, all-rounder bike, and they've got a dropped wrist day.
Yeah, and it's not a case of Cannondale just following the crowd and going through it. They've done a lot of testing, a lot of aerodynamic testing, and they've all come up with the same conclusion. Drop stays are faster. Drop stays are more comfortable. And so that's why it's done that. And that's why they are there and why they deserve a place on this particular bike.
Good. I mean, you could have said previously, before the System 6, that Cannondale didn't really have a foot in the door with aerodynamics. They didn't have an aero bike. No. You know, they weren't showing any aero properties with the old SuperSix. So I guess the System 6 really sort of paved the way for their thinking in terms of aerodynamics, which we know to be a very fast and capable bike. So that this just brings that back a little bit, doesn't it? And you know, goes more at the all-round ability of a bike.
Yeah, it's, you know, the same team that was responsible for the System 6 had a say and had a hand in terms of designing this to keep it as aero as possible. But obviously then they need to make sure that it's a bike that everybody can ride, and that as a GC bike, it's definitely up there.
So Cannondale as a brand for many, many years were pushing their aluminium. They're sort of pioneers in that sector really. What they're doing with their technology and that material is amazing. But what are they doing with carbon, and what have they done with the SuperSix to make that an amazing bike?
So obviously one of the things that we talk about in terms of like the SuperSix ride feel is that perfect balance between stiffness and comfort, and that's where the carbon fibre comes into play with this. So what Cannondale has been doing a lot recently, and this came from their Synapse endurance range, is they've got this SAVE system, which is like Synapse Active Vibration Elimination. So it's almost like micro suspension that's designed in the frame. So there's parts of this carbon that's designed to flex in certain ways as a system to reduce that amount of vibration and the road feel. So it gives it, and again, we're talking about those cliches, it's like a magic carpet ride. So I went on the launch for this bike, and as part of the launch, we're in Vermont. And Vermont, you sort of think, America, beautiful smooth roads and everything. No, the roads there are horrendous. And we were riding these bikes super fast and on like broken tarmac. And it was just incredible how it not only stays online, but also just makes you feel like you can just keep putting down the power.
It really is smooth, isn't it?
Oh my God, oh my God.
So
Yeah.
I've experienced the technology in the Synapse, and when I first jumped on it, it's like, it just feels smooth.
Yeah.
It's like kind of takes the rattles away and the vibrations, and it's like, this is comfortable. It's
Yeah, and we rode gravel on it as well, so we just like did all this stuff, and yeah, it kind of does that. But there's that first bit of your brain that kind of goes, oh God, it feels like it's too soft. So like something's giving here, something like I don't know, is it taking my energy? But no, it absolutely flies. So it's like testament to the way that the carbon is laid up and the design of the frame that gives it that.
So even at the launch of the System 6, which was a couple of years ago now, pro riders in the professional teams sponsored by Cannondale had their riders going back to the SuperSix just because of its ride, the way it felt, its all-round ability. A lot of that came down to its geometry, and it was lauded that the geometry of the old SuperSix was great. So what have they done here, and what they changed to sort of keep that characteristic?
So there are a lot of similarities between this and the old version in terms of its geometry, but there have been changes. And what's quite interesting is they've actually made it a bit more relaxed. And it's a bit more sort of accessible to more riders. So they've done that in two ways. The first way is they've shortened the reach. So it's actually a slightly sort of like shorter bike now than it used to be. And they've made it taller. So they've actually increased the stack height. So it just means that you can actually sort of get on the bike and you've got an extra level of comfort really in terms of your riding position. You can see that they also sell, all the bikes come with about 30 millimeters of spaces underneath the stem.
That's a lot,
which is quite a lot. So it just means that more people, a wider audience, is able to get on a bike that is, it is still an incredible race bike, but feel at home. And that's a big, big positive for this new version as well.
So this is the high mod version, as you just
Yes.
mentioned. So that's their top end carbon
Yeah,
bike.
so to this particular model here that we've tested, this is the SuperSix Evo High Mod Disc Ultegra Di2 version. It retails at $6,499.99. So it's high up, and Cannondale do have several models of high mod available to you to buy. And the big difference here is the carbon they use. So they still call it Ballistic carbon, which is one of the Cannondale's like sort of names. But it's a very ultra high modulus carbon fiber, and they use as minimum amount of resin as possible. So it's very, very light, very stiff. So it is stiffer and lighter than the standard versions.
But then, we think about £6,000 is obviously a very large sum of money to spend on a bike. My car doesn't even cost that amount. But if you put that into context of other brands' high-end models, you go to Trek, Specialized, whoever you want to point your stick at, for that level of quality and componentry, you're stepping up a couple more grand, aren't you?
You are. It is amazing. Like Cannondale still has that level of value. It's kind of weird saying that term here, but it does have that almost that advantage over a lot of its competitors in terms of what you get for your money. And it's also one of those things that as soon as you step on that bike and as soon as you start riding, everything about, oh my God, it's cost so much money, it just goes, because it's just a very, very rewarding, incredible bike to ride. It's probably one of the best bikes I've ever ridden. The other thing as well with the high mod versions is you'll notice there's a power meter. So this is something, again, Cannondale are doing really, really well. All of their high models come with a power meter. I think
it makes complete sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and there's a few other brands that are doing that, but then the prices are so much higher. There's also this new speed sensor that Cannondale are putting with all of their new bikes. It's kind of like a little thing, but it just adds a little bit extra. So it collects speed, distance, and time data for up to 900 hours of riding.
Wow, okay.
And it connects to Cannondale. Have got a new app. Obviously, everything these days has an app, but Cannondale has this app that it will connect to that, so it will record all your data. You can put it down onto Strava and things as well. But it also then gives you, this is really cool, it kind of like gives you your service intervals. So it tells you when like you maybe need to go and get your bike serviced and stuff. That's a real cool little feature there as well. But yeah, everything else about the bike is just really, really well designed, thought out. And apart from the saddle, it's pretty much all Cannondale as well. I could talk for hours about this bike, that's how much I love it, but I'm going to stop there. So this is Cannondale's SuperSix Evo High Mod Disc Ultegra Di2, and it's in Editor's Choice.
Thanks, James. Yes, if you've liked this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Cycling Weekly YouTube channel, and click on the notification bell as well to see all the latest and greatest content from Editor's Choice.
I could talk for hours about this bike. That's how much I love this thing. But I'm going to stop there, really. This is obviously the... Oh.
You're still going! Shut the f*** up!
Yeah.